Yeah, fellow Kotanas, and welcome back to the channel, and welcome back to my Super-tober Supernatural 20th anniversary celebration. And I am Cropivian. Today I'm reviewing seasons 12 and 13, what I call the birth of the NEPHILIM. These two seasons had a lot of unknowing in terms of what was going to happen with this character of the NEPHILIM that we get introduced to in season 12. We also get a lot deeper look into the Men of Letters here in season 12. So let's do this thing. Season 12 started off with Sam being taken by one of the Women of Letters. After she was waiting in the bunker for either one or both of the Winchesters to get back to the bunker, and she's waiting there, and, well, we hear a shot, see a shot, and we don't know whether Sam's dead or just injured. Well, it turns out she just wounded him because she has some questions for our dear old Sam Winchester, and this begins a whole journey into parts unknown with the Men of Letters, now apparently seeming that they think they need to come over to America and try and garner their own will among the hunters of the United States. So a lot of pressure is on the Winchesters early on, and now with Mary being thrown in the mix very fast. I mean, she literally just came back in season 11's finale, and now she's being thrown right back into the hunt with the Men of Letters, and of course Cass is along for the ride, and it just goes from what do these people want to these people are schemy little bastards to yes, it's finally done. They're finally over with. We can finally move on from the Men of Letters, but there's this looming cloud over everybody of the NEPHILIM being born. And, of course, Lucifer would take up a big piece of the story after they had to ask him some questions about the darkness. He would, of course, get out, no thanks to Cass, and ultimately would lead us to him basically possessing a supposed very powerful person of the world and then sleeping with one of his people. Lucifer is at his best at this point in time. I mean, in terms of his character, not so much best in terms of Lucifer. Lucifer's got a lot of angst and anger towards the Winchesters. At this point, with the Men of Letters and Lucifer being out there in the world, and then, of course, with him impregnating Kelly, it just goes so wild and so crazy in a blink of an eye. And, of course, Chuck and Amara are nowhere to be seen because they're off waltzing the universe, getting to know each other again. But ultimately, season 12 was actually a very interesting and very unique kind of season because it doesn't just have a supernatural power being one of the big bads. It has the Men of Letters being one of the main big bads, with Lucifer being the kind of the main big bad of the season. But also you have the birth of the NEPHILIM, which nobody knows. There's only really been a few in the history that Supernatural had pointed on at that point in time, so nobody really knew which way it was going to go. And then with Cass, of course, protecting Kelly, he's an angel, but he's supposed to kill a NEPHILIM, but he's protecting her, and it ends up imprinting on what would become known as Jack, played by Alexander Calvert, later on in the end of the season and into season 13 and so on and so forth. Ultimately, with season 12 being kind of the start of this whole story of Jack's story, there's a lot of just questions that get thrown out there that are really unique to the realm of supernatural. The government captures Sam and Dean. That moment and that, First Blood, that little episode, which I've talked about in my ranking episodes, it was just such a good episode. It was so fun to watch, and it's so fun to go back and watch again, because it throws everything at the Winchesters from a human perspective. And the only other time we've had a human be kind of the villain of Supernatural was kind of Gordon Walker, who would eventually get turned into a vampire. And then, of course, Agent Henriksen, who really wasn't a villain. He was just kind of the character trying to capture Sam and Dean. So I don't really classify him as a villain, but he definitely wasn't for the good guys at first until in Justin Bello, where everything comes to the truth for Henriksen. And then season 12's finale brings in the Rip in Space Time, which was a very nice tweak. There's always these different kind of realms and dimensions that are mentioned in Supernatural, and Sam and Dean they've gone back in time before, and they've kind of gone to other dimensions with, like, the French Mistake, but this brought a different kind of source to get to those places, to get to those other areas of the world, and it was so interesting to see that. And to see how, unfortunately, though, Crowley would play his last dance in this one, helping the Winchesters try and trap Lucifer in the Apocalypse world, which is a world where just everything has gone completely upside down and haywire. The Winchesters are not really a thing. Mary is in terms of that world, but Sam and Dean are not. Bobby's there. I mean, it comes more full circle in season 13. But season 12 would end on a souring note, nonetheless, because while the birth of the Nephilim, Jack, is happening, this Rip in Space Time, they're trying to lock Lucifer in this other world. Well, slightly goes to plan, but it doesn't really go to plan, because Mary ends up on the other side, Cass ends up dying, Crowley kills himself to continue the spell to try and trap Lucifer on the other side, and it's just one big hitting episode for Sam and Dean after they disposed of the Men of Letters, who had some further secrets of their own that Sam and Dean would, of course, take up, like the werewolf cure, for instance. But season 13 would focus more on Jack, would focus more on the Apocalypse world and these other kind of dimensions that these rifts would take people to, and also kind of would bring in the idea of the Dream Walker in a character named Kaya, who keeps traveling to a place that she calls the Dark Place, where a figure keeps trying to kill her, and Jack eventually finds her after he's really kind of blamed by Dean to be the cause of everything wrong, essentially, and with Chuck not answering Dean's call behind the little restaurant on their hunt to try and find Jack immediately and as soon as possible, and getting stuck in that jail with angels surrounding them, and of course Jack showing more of his power and how he's able to off angels pretty much willingly and without very much hesitation. For Sam, he wants to try and learn from Jack. He wants to study Jack, but he also wants to teach Jack. Dean just sees him as a monster at first and doesn't see him as part of the family or anything. He blames Jack for pretty much everything because Jack's the one in the season 12 finale that opened up the rift because he had that ability to. Season 13 goes really just emotionally hard for Sam and Dean because at every turn when it seems like they're going to open a rift or get a chance to get a spell to open the rift, something happens and they get further and further away from getting Mary back, their mom back. Of course, Jack would eventually find the Apocalypse world, no thanks to Kaya, who would get stuck in the dark place, and Sam and Dean would go after, who would eventually have to have the Wayward Sisters go after them as well, and it just piled on in the dark place where Dark Kaya would seemingly kill Kaya. As far as we knew, she was dead at this point, thanks to that spear throw. And Dark Kaya would cross the threshold and come into our world. And really it just was such a unique season to Supernatural. And he doesn't fully understand his own powers. And that's why I consider these two seasons the full birth of the Nephilim story, because once season 14 starts, that's the start of the end. That's where the whole thing, it's not when season 14 ends and then season 15 begins. No, 14 it starts, we are on the road to the end. That is it. It is do or die. Of course, we come across Michael, Apocalypse World Michael, who is trying to kill the rest of the living humans, including Bobby, Mary, of course, Jack's there, and Michael's trying to also understand why these people are there and how they got there in the first place and how he can get to the other side. Of course, on a all-out mission with Ketch, by the way, and Charlie's back. Thankfully, Charlie's back. But in an all-out mission to save their mom, to save Jack, and to bring him home, they also bring back everybody else from Apocalypse World, all the survivors, and bring them back to our world, or their world, however you want to say it. And literally, it is such a pulse-pounding episode. We think Sam dies, but of course he's not really. Lucifer finds him, and it's just crazy, crazy, crazy within the world of Apocalypse World. And at the end of that episode, we of course see Lucifer and Michael team up to get to the other side, and for the season finale, it is balls to the wall. I mean, if you weren't paying attention throughout what was going on through this season and you just went to the final 2 episodes, you'd be pretty lost. Because it's such an intricate season, probably the most intricate season that Supernatural had really done up to that point. And that finale where Dean does the one thing that he never wanted to do, which is say yes to Michael, and not really knowing what this version of Michael is capable of, because honestly, Apocalypse World Michael seemed stronger than our version of Michael, who was currently still in the cage in hell. And it would have been interesting, actually. It would have been really interesting to see what that would have done if those two Michaels would have clashed with each other, or if they would have ended up teaming up. That would have been really interesting to see. I would have loved to see that. And that's one of the first things that came to my mind when they introduced Apocalypse World Michael to the fold. But of course, Dean says yes. And at the end, we think Lucifer's dead. And we think the vessel is dead of Lucifer. Michael takes control of Dean, and thus would begin the end, which I will talk about in the next video. All in all, seasons 12 and 13, Lucifer's son and Lucifer taking his power at the end of season 13 to try and get his grace back, to try and get his power back, and Dean saying yes to Michael, and then, of course, Michael doing what angels do best and takes control of Dean and becomes a stranger in a strange land. It's just a balls-to-the-wall season. All in all, these were two really good seasons. Definitely one of my other favorites. I don't think it would be top 3, but it's pretty close. I love the different side of these rifts in times and these different creatures and these worlds that are out there other than just what we have come to know. And it's cool to explore that and to see a little bit of that from time to time. That's going to end it. Very good season. Just seasons that had a lot of unknowing to them and a lot of who are these people? Are the Men of Letters really good, or are they really just out for themselves? They're clearly out for themselves. We ain't doing that. We ain't playing that. We ain't going to play it your way, guys. And, of course, Jack coming into the story. It was such a great story from top to bottom for Sam and Dean Winchester to try and deal with everything that was happening and the newness of the other world. So, I thank you all so much for watching. If you like this episode, summon up a thumb and hit that like button. If you want to subscribe, it'd be really cool of you. And if you want to leave a comment down below on your thoughts on these 2 seasons, go ahead and leave them down below. I always love hearing from you guys. Aside from that, always remember to imagine your dream, create your happiness, and live your life on the edge. And I will see you in that next episode. See ya.